Okay, so this is going to be part 2 of how disc injuries occur, but also how they heal. So if you haven't seen part 1, make sure you go and watch that. We'll link it somewhere. Watch that first, and then this is the second part, which we're going to explain how disc injuries recover and the healing process for spinal disc. So quick recap of the anatomy. The discs themselves, 2 main parts. We've got the outside covering the annulus, collagen fibers, and then the center part is the gel nucleus. So again, when those disc injuries occur, what will happen is that gel can start to pierce through those delaminations there, and they can start to make their way out backwards. So that when we have a big disc bulge or a disc herniation, which is where it comes out the back through there, right? So that's what we discussed in part 1. So how does the healing take place? Well, there's a very specific process. The fibers of the annulus that have woven themselves apart and delaminated, what will happen is your body secretes what's called a ground substance. Now this is made up of proteoglycans, some water, different types of cells that come into that area. And what it does is it basically forms a bit of a callus. So if you imagine a callus like a bit of a scab on our arm, that delamination, the ground substance gets secreted in there and it starts to callus or harden. However, this is the very important part, is that when it is initially secreted, it's soft, like a gel or like a fluidy, thick phlegm. So when you bend and move that spine excessively, when it's first secreted, it can easily just peel off. So say for example, we just injured that disc, we're starting to secrete that ground substance into those gaps, but we're bending and moving excessively from that spine. Because that ground substance is soft initially, it can just peel off. Right? And so that's why it's so important to understand the movement proficiency. So we provide sufficient stability around the disc, so we're not straining it and we're actually moving from the ball and socket joints, again, movement proficiency, to allow that callusing to happen. So we're allowing that those fibers can gristle back up with that ground substance and it can really harden and form a bit of a callus that we want it to do. When that callusing takes place, and this takes a while over time, the disc will eventually harden up so that it can bear load again sufficiently, and then when you bend and move, once it's calloused and hardened up, the disc isn't going to protrude backwards and it's not going to bulge out as much. So that's where we've got to create the environment for that to happen. So an important part of the healing process is building movement proficiency, as we're saying. So no mistake that we've got ball and socket joints either side of the spine, so obviously the hips and then the shoulders as well. So when it comes to the healing process, the more optimal we can move with less stress on the discs, the better it can heal, the easier that healing process can take place. So that's where you've got to actually identify the movement patterns, make sure that they're efficient, build your spinal stability so that when you're moving, the discs aren't under undue stress, and then from there, you can actually assist with the healing process and get back to pain-free living and doing the things that you want to do.